Hello and welcome to Crash Course Navigating Digital Information. Live here. The average American spends 24 hours per week online, but 1 in 4 US adults say that they are online almost constantly, and I am among them. I love the internet. It contains so much helpful information. It connects us to each other. It allows more people to have a voice in public conversations. But of course, the internet is also littered with misleading, sensationalized, and downright false information. So when you want to see what your friends are up to, you might head to Snapchat or WhatsApp or Instagram or maybe Finstagram. I don't get that joke, but young people in the office said that it was funny. And then when you want the news, you may wait to be startled by a push alert from a news app, or you might go to Twitter or Snapchat or Reddit. And when you need to settle a feud over how to pronounce GIF or possibly GIF, you just use a search engine. These habits all feel quite natural to me, but in fact, they're part of a huge shift in how humans find and produce and share information. Just a short time ago, the production of information was controlled by a much smaller group of people. Instead of Googling movie times, you had to buy a newspaper or call the movie theater and risk talking to an actual human being. To write a research paper, you had to hunker down in the library, not for the outlets and free Wi-Fi, but for the access to encyclopedias and books. Now, I should note that there's a lot of information that is not available online and that is available at your library. Libraries continue to be incredibly valuable resources. But these days, anyone can hop online and produce information via their personal website or their social media or their YouTube channel. Well, actually, no. Access to digital devices and high-speed internet is still a real barrier to entry for many people, which means unequal access to information. It also means that while it can feel like everyone is participating in Facebook or Instagram, in fact, billions of people are not part of those conversations. Still, the barrier for creating and retrieving information is much lower than it was a generation ago. Like when I was a kid, if you wanted to share an opinion with the public, you wrote a letter to the newspaper and hoped they would publish it. There was no other way for a stranger to hear your story or your perspective. Furthermore, as you already know from the 3 DMs you've answered since you started this video, the internet changed how we communicate. We can talk across time and space. We can connect across geographical and political boundaries. We can create organizations and communities, find people with similar interests, or we can lift people up when they feel alone. But when information flows that freely, dangers are inevitable. Misinformation, unintentionally incorrect information, and disinformation, information that's wrong on purpose, spread quickly online, as do hate speech and propaganda. Plus, we can easily create online worlds where we only see information we already agree with or that lines up with our point of view. For instance, if I only followed people on Twitter who were Team Blake, I would have been pretty blindsided when Garrett won The Bachelorette. And the same could be said for, actual elections. And because we use information for all kinds of decisions, misinformation and disinformation are really powerful. This is true for small everyday decisions. Restaurant reviews affect where we eat, and for much larger issues like choosing a college to attend or a place to work. The quality of our information directly shapes the quality of our decisions, and the quality of our decisions, of course, shapes the quality of our shared experience as humans. So when we talk about bad or questionable information, that includes fake news, the kind of news reporting that is totally false, which is a huge problem, especially on social media and during breaking news events, and it's a problem across all political ideologies and perspectives. But we're not just talking about fake news, we're also talking about information that isn't credible because the author of that content isn't an authority on the topic. Take a blog of serious-sounding fitness tips from someone who loves gym selfies but isn't qualified to give professional health advice. We're also talking about information that comes from writers or organizations that have something to lose from the whole truth, like a company that sells toasters creating besttoasters.com to publish lists of the best toasters with their brand at the top of every list. Or friends who conveniently find videos that supposedly prove that GIF is pronounced GIF when you know that GIF is pronounced GIF. But the thing is, quality of information lies on a spectrum. It's not a duality, good information and bad information. It is our job to evaluate the information that we receive, find out where it falls on that spectrum, and decide how to use it going forward. But as a species, we are not very good at judging the quality of information on the internet. In fact, we've always been bad at it. In 2002, a study with over 2,000 participants reported that a website's design was the most frequently mentioned factor in judging a website's credibility. When asked to choose which of two sites was more credible, 46% of participants used the look of the website in their evaluations. Adults and young people alike still typically evaluate information based on factors unrelated to its content, how it looks, whether they've used it before, or who referred them to it. In 2016, our friends at the Stanford History Education Group released a study of over 7,000 middle school, high school, and college students. When asked to evaluate online information, they based their evaluations on a site's look and feel. They focused on things that a website creator could easily change, like the URL or the About page. Spoiler alert, that technique doesn't work well. One of the things that participants had to do was judge minimumwage.com, a site about, you guessed it, the minimum wage. It claimed to bust myths behind the minimum wage, listing ways that raising it would hurt the economy. Many students never discovered that that site was by a public relations firm working for a group that wants to keep minimum wages low. The firm represents industries that stand to benefit from paying employees less. In other words, the creator of this website has something to lose by telling both sides of the minimum wage debate, so we can't fully trust them to do so. All right, let's go to the thought bubble. During the study, some students also felt the presence of certain types of content on a website meant that it was more reliable. Like when students found something they thought was evidence on a page, a statistic or an anecdote perhaps, they assumed that meant the entire page was more reliable. And they often didn't check the sources because, you know, it's the internet. People never check sources. For example, participants also looked at an article that was actually an advertisement for Shell Oil. 70% of high school students rated it as more reliable than a traditional news story. Why? Because of this pie chart at the top. Statistics and infographics are often easy and effective ways to communicate facts and evidence, but that doesn't mean that all charts are trustworthy. Like, here's another chart. It says that 96% of the time the sky is green. The existence of this chart is no more proof of its validity than, say, a spooky noise is proof that your house is haunted. But back to the Stanford History Education Group study, over 80% of middle school students didn't correctly identify that this was an ad either, even though it was labeled sponsored content. Sponsored content means a company paid the publication for a space on its site, hoping to advertise with a post that looks like a news article. And as you may know, sponsored content also shapes a lot of discourse on YouTube. And it's effective advertising because many of us can't help but believe that what looks like a news article must in fact be one. Thanks, Thought Bubble. So you might argue that the students in that study are still learning, and they'll probably get better at evaluating information when they get older. Well, the Stanford History Education Group also tested historians with PhDs, first-year college students from a pretty fancy university, and professional fact-checkers from major news organizations. Fact-checkers are the people who go through each bit of copy in a news story to make sure that all the facts are accurate. There are far too few of them in this world. But anyway, how effectively would you guess those three groups evaluated information quality? Although the professors and the college students have obviously achieved academic success and are smart, thoughtful people, they also didn't do well with the experiment. When evaluating online sources, they too focused on superficial things like the site's layout, how much content the site had, and whether it linked to other sites. They focused largely on appearance and the presence of things like evidence and links, not their content or their value. And those strategies might have worked to an extent in the early days of the internet, but things are much more complicated now, and there are many misleading or false stories that cite sources that either don't say what they're purported to say or are themselves also false. it's misinformation all the way down. So who did sort out the misinformation from the good info? The fact checkers. I mean, it is literally their jobs, but it's nice to know that they were good at it. The fact checkers did well because they employed a variety of carefully honed skills to decipher fact from fiction. And we're going to learn those skills together from the fact checkers in our next episode. Also the one after that, and the one after that, and the one after that. We're going to fact checker school. In the meantime, if you're interested in learning more about MediaWise and fact checking, you can visit @MediaWise on Instagram or just search for them. Thanks for swimming with me. I'll see you next time. Thank you for watching Crash Course, which is filmed here in Indianapolis, Indiana, with the help of all of these nice people.